Please welcome to the stage the first out trans state senator elected in the United States, Delaware State Senator Sarah McBride.
Hello, Victory! It is fantastic to be with family again. I am so excited to be here. And before I begin, I just would love all of us to give a round of applause to the food and beverage staff at this hotel who've made this incredible event possible. My name is Sarah McBride. I represent the 1st Senate District in the 1st state, and I am a proud transgender woman. Growing up, that sentence would have seemed so impossible to me that it would have been almost incomprehensible. As many of you have heard me speak about before, for much of my life, I feared that my dreams of finding love, of doing work that I loved, of living in a community that I love, were mutually exclusive with being an out trans person. In many ways, like so many in this room, my journey to coming out was a grieving process of sorts. For it was only when I accepted what seemed like the definite loss of any future that I was finally able to accept myself. That is, until I found victory. I was just finishing up my junior year in college, just days before I would come out publicly in an op-ed in the American University student newspaper. Do we have any Eagles here? All right. It's not a typical DC crowd to not have that many AE students. We're insufferably everywhere. But I was just about to come out when I was offered my first opportunity as my authentic self, the Victory Congressional Internship Program. It was my first glimmer of hope that maybe my world wouldn't come crashing down. But I was also scared, and so I turned it down, sharing that I was afraid to work in a building filled with so many anti-trans politicians and staffers. I asked instead if I could intern in the Victory office. And so, just days after I began living authentically, I walked into Victory for my first job as myself. I spent the summer tracking Victory candidates, watching openly LGBTQ people running in states across the country. I attended a Victory candidate training. I met out-trans presidential appointees, people like Amanda Simpson, and I found my hope again. I found my confidence. I saw that diversity in government is not a luxury, but a necessity. I saw that you cannot craft effective solutions for diverse communities if you do not have the full diversity of those communities at the table. That you cannot have a government of the people and by the people if you don't have all of the people represented. I saw that to make our democracy work, LGBTQ people not only had the right to run, but a responsibility to run. And in the nearly decades since that internship, we have witnessed historic progress. But as others have touched on, we gather today at a challenging moment for our community. We see the limits of our advancements. We see the risks of visibility without equal power and policy to back it up. And we see the same forces that have attempted to prevent our progress for decades, now targeting some of the most vulnerable in our community, transgender kids. We are facing a cruel, concerted, and connected strategy that is trying to strip away any layer of support that a trans kid may have. Parents, providers, educators, classmates, coaches, and teammates, leaving trans kids isolated. I know it sounds hyperbolic, but the outcome of that strategy is to make life so difficult for trans kids that some never grow up to be adults. Anti-LGBTQ forces are fomenting a public panic because they are panicked by the fact that the clock is ticking on their bigotry. They've turned children into political pawns in order to distract from the fact that they are devoid of any real ideas to meet the challenges of our time. And they want to undermine the next generation of LGBTQ leaders and voters because they just realized what those of us in this room have long known. These young people are badasses. The stakes for these kids could not be higher. But let's also be clear. As Attorney General Healey mentioned, the story of our movement, the story of our community is the story of people of every age transforming pain into progress, of turning our most significant challenges into our biggest steps forward. It was in the flames of riots at the Stonewall Inn that our modern movement was born. It was in the height of a deadly epidemic that we organized and mobilized in new ways. It was in response to marriage ban after marriage ban passing in states across the country that we had conversations that served to open hearts and change minds and bring marriage equality to every state in this land. And when they sought to ban trans people from everything from bathrooms to the military, we came out, we marched, we voted, and we showed politicians like Pat McCrory and Donald Trump the door. Every time they come for us, we end up growing stronger. And now, because of the work of the Victory Fund, when they come for us, they don't just have to face us at the ballot box or as a united movement. They now have to come before LGBTQ people and increasingly trans people in government. Earlier this year, a Republican colleague of mine put forward one of the more than 150 anti-trans bills introduced in legislatures across the country this year alone. 150 bills just targeting trans people. And do you know which committee I was thrilled that that bill was referred to? The committee that I'm not only on, but the committee that I am proud to chair. I'm not afraid to walk the halls with them anymore. And so, my friends, consistent with our legislative rules, I held a hearing on that bill. And they finally had to answer our questions. They had to look me as a trans person in the eye and justify their discrimination. They had to ask for a trans person's vote. And I don't think it'll come as any surprise, they didn't get it. For decades, trans people have had to go before anti-trans lawmakers in the big chair to plead for our dignity and our rights. But now, for the first time ever, because of the work of Victory, anti-trans forces had to come before a trans person in the big chair. And for trans kids who are watching that hearing, many of whom are facing bullies from the classroom to Congress, they got to not only see that someone in government is fighting for them, they got to see that it is someone just like them. They got to feel that their government sees them and for the first time ever really understands them. That is the importance of representation. That's the essence of democracy. Regardless of the slurs they heard around the dinner table or the names they were called on the playground, they got to see and feel both what has always been present and what has never been truer than it is today. That ultimately, no matter the challenges or setbacks we face, we hold our individual destiny and our collective future in our own hands. That we are strong and resilient. That hope and history are on our side. And that together, anything is possible. Thank you all very much. It's a privilege to be with you today, and it's an honor to be with you in this fight.